Welcome to Deep Thought. Many trends and movements have repercussions. And you know what? I was actually going to talk about something else about many trends and movements happening right before our eyes and explain how many people are missing them. But then I was thinking about an example and I was like, that has major repercussions. And I'll give you two right now. One because of the recent Roe v. Wade overturn, and then another based on a lot of stuff we see like in this general section of YouTube. One, that Roe v. Wade overturn. Now, a lot of people are focusing on, underground railroad for abortion to states that still allow it. Or, people are talking about now you have some people arguing about the banning contraceptives and everything, which ultimately comes down to certain populations wanting to increase their numbers, because in most of the world outside of Africa, the population has been going down. Okay, but see, it's an interesting trend that's happening. It might go down even more despite the overturn of Roe v. Wade. And the reason why is there's been an increase in many men getting vasectomies. And there's probably, I would have to look for maybe an increase in women getting their tubes tied. I can't think of the exact word right now, but the technical word. But I was like, wait a minute, there's a trend. Wait a minute, because a lot of guys, they were like, oh, we don't want no babies. And then you add to that trend of a portion of men, especially younger men, who aren't having sex any damn way. So what does that affect? Well, definitely the population, but then it affects the economy as well. Much of the economy is based on what children will want. Children's foods, children's toys. At a local Macy's, I'm seeing that they're putting in, Macy's period, they reincorporating Toys R Us. Remember Toys R Us, it went out of business a few years ago. They're coming back, but then as a part of another department store. But there's a problem there if you don't have babies to buy the stuff. That affects baby clothing, formula, anything for babies, diapers, everything. That starts affecting other parts of the economy. Plus children, they tend, you got to do all this stuff for them. You got to constantly buy them clothes, school systems. Depending on the location, a school might have to close because they simply don't have enough students, which affects the jobs of teachers. It was like, wait a minute, just that one little thing, just men and women just not having babies anymore. And indeed, then with the infertility, everything, that's more of a trend. But then you still got some movements that many people don't see. You still have some movements that will affect the economy. Like, I give you an example one. There's some other movements happening. Let's just say I'll keep them to myself because they're happening within the black community. That, for whatever reasons, even some blacks don't see it. And I'm like, wait a minute, how come nobody's talking about this or this or this? There's at least two, there's at least one major one. And no, don't ask me, I'm not going to tell you. I don't know who you are. So, but it's major. It's major. Nobody's talking about it. That gets into more some politics and stuff like that. And no, I'm not talking about it. If it's on the news, I'm not talking about it. Because trust me, I have yet to see anything. Well, I've seen some minor stories about it, but nothing in the last few years. But anyway, one of the things is, like, just in general, the vegan movement. That can affect the economy, because if you got more people eating vegan, and not just like these Impossible burgers or something, or they eating more natural foods, at some point that affects the meat industries majorly. And even a lot of stuff that has like animal products in them. And indeed, another trend which could have repercussions, having major repercussions, is the legalization of marijuana. Because it's more than just getting something that you can, shoot, they got clothing based on hemp, everything. That's a major movement. A lot of money is being made there. A lot of money, so that's a positive repercussion. But one of the things, there's a bunch. There are so many things happening. See, understand one thing about me. What I've said before, I got an interest in subcultures when I was working at the Department of Justice Disability Rights section. And I found out about deaf culture, the deaf community. They have a language, and American Sign Language is their language. So they have a language that got certain norms and everything. And even, and of course we got political movements. Those are the obvious movements, different political waves on both sides of the aisle that can have repercussions, depending if they get in a position of power on both sides of the aisle. But then what about some more social movements, What about, there's a movement, more people becoming more spiritual. And in fact, here's another thing. Let me get back to the politics. If you look at the numbers of Republicans who registered Republicans, okay, you got slightly more more registered Democrats. Okay, because I saw, somebody said that, I looked it up. But most of the registered voters, the largest plurality of registered voters are independent. And that's going to change a lot. That's going to change a lot. Because you got different political parties, they want to keep their base happy, but if they want to win elections, either side, I don't care, even the third parties, you got to talk to the independents. And independents tend to focus more on kitchen table issues, direct issues. They don't care about the ideologies. They want to eat. But that's a major movement, and it'd be interesting how that really starts affecting future elections. It'd be interesting, and they will have a repercussion, because at some point, you have a couple independents in Congress now, the Senate now, who caucus generally with the Democrats, but what happens when you got 20 independents? Oh, repercussion. It makes a big difference. 30 independents. What happens when the independents outnumber both parties in Congress in maybe a few decades? So that's a movement right there. The vegan movement. Like I said, there's some stuff happening within the black community, American black community. And I ain't talking about a reparations movement either, that I'm surprised nobody's talking about. Nobody's really talking about it. I'm like, wow. Yeah, I know people are going to be paying attention to me now, but as saying is, for those who know, no explanation is necessary. For those who don't, none is possible. Yeah, y'all don't know I speak in code a lot on here. But anyway, there's many things, and I would just say pay attention to little things. I pay attention to music. I pay attention to every little thing. I be paying attention to how people wearing their hair, everything. Because one of the things just in this environment, something happening in one area is always going to affect something. It's always. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. So anyway, though, that's all I have for today. I want y'all to really think about it and just start paying attention. It could be the most minor thing, but pay attention to it. Pay attention, because for any movement or trend, that affects everything else. That affects everything else. It affects economics. It affects politics. It affects people's relationships, because most people mate within their social group. So if you have you actually have a growing trend of people, men and women, men having multiple women, and though it's kept quiet, some women having multiple men. You actually have a growing trend of it. So it's something to really pay attention to everything. How will that affect the overall marriage picture? I'm surprised. I'm still surprised there hasn't been a major movement, at least not yet, of people trying to legalize polygamy. And you never know, it might happen. But it's something to pay attention to. Pay attention to everything. If you got just a few people doing something, pay attention. Now, some movements and trends, they die off. but then something else grows from it, or some of them will mutate. But still, they all have repercussions. Even the ones that might die out, you don't know who they affect. You know, somebody might emerge out of that movement and say, okay, with this I can change it. And depending on which side you on, it could be good or it could be bad. It depends on which side of it that you're on. So pay attention to all of these things because they all have repercussions. So anyway, that's all I have for today. As always, keep rising. Pay attention, y'all. Peace and blessings.